again to another Java short tutorial, and in this tutorial I am going to demonstrate how to use a while loop. So once again, let's create a class. Example 07. So basically, if you've seen my previous video, I explained how to create a for loop in there. And a for loop is what we refer to as a finite loop. Why? Because you have to indicate how many times a for loop is going to loop. That is not the case for a while loop. A while loop can actually keep on looping until a certain criteria is given, until a certain value is reached or certain criteria is met. And it may not necessarily always be clear in advance when this criteria will be met. Okay, so what is the basic syntax? Well, one of the simplest for loops I can think of would kind of work like this. I have an integer counter which has a value, and I have a while loop which starts with the word while, then has two brackets which are going to contain the control expression, or the expression that has to be met for the loop to continue looping. In this case I'm going to say while count is bigger than 0. And again, like with the for loop, I have two accolades. So basically everything between these two accolades will continue to loop as long as the value of count is larger than 0. So for every time this executes, I'm going to say system.out.println. And what do I want to print? Well, I want to print the value of count. So I'm going to say count plus count. So now let's run this. So in this case I've created a little bit of a mistake, as you can see, and I'm going to stop it, else it's going to crash. It keeps on saying count 10, count 10, count 10. Because unlike the for loop, I have not created a variable or an expression that changes the value of count. It is normally part of the for loop, but there's no such thing in the while loop. So what I need to do is inside my while loop reduce the value of count at every loop so that the value is changed and the loop will eventually terminate. So now let's run again. So now you can indeed see it's count 10, 9, all the way until 1. Why all the way until 1? Because 0 is not bigger than 0, and thus when the value count reaches the value of count reaches 0, the loop will terminate. And yeah, there's a lot of variations in which this can be used, I suppose. One of the ways I can think of to make it more like an infinite loop would be if I use my scanner to read input. So let me quickly declare that. And import it first so I can rely more on my auto-completion. Use the limiter, \r\n. There we go. So in this case I'm gonna give count the value of -1, and yeah, what shall I do for a control expression? Continue looping while count is, how about larger than, smaller than 2. So in this case, and you will see later how this works. So in this case I'm gonna create a print line, enter a number. And below there I'm going to update the value of count using my scanner. Okay, so what have I written here? Basically I've written a program that will continue to keep on looping while count is smaller than 2. So basically it will loop for -1, it will loop for 1, it will loop for 0, and after 2 or higher it will terminate. So basically, if I now run this, it will tell me enter a number. So let's just key in 0, and it will just result me in asking to be entered a number again. So I key in 1, it will still loop. So now if I key in 2, it will terminate, because the criteria is met. I update the value of count every time I loop using my scanner, and the moment that count has a value that is bigger than 1 or is 2 or higher, it will terminate. So one more other variation could be while count is smaller than 2 or count is bigger than 10. So now if I run this, it will still be the same thing if I key in 0, but if I key in 11, which is bigger than 2, it will also continue to loop. However, if I key in 7, which is between 2 and 10, it will terminate. So there you have it in a nutshell. All the different things you can do with a infinite loop called the while loop. See you next time.